Venus blessings. Normally I say star blessings, but I have to say Venus blessings, given we are talking about the goddess today. So today I'm going to talk about Venus retrograde in Leo, and there's quite a bit to cover because we need to understand, the journey of retrograde, the fact that it is a morning star in Leo, where that began, what we're coming out of, and so forth. And I'll break it down and unpack it one bit at a time. I have mentioned that I've been studying Venus in the Babylonian traditions, which I have, and that's probably why I haven't been making any videos the last. I had a look, it's been almost 11 days. Yeah, I mean, time just escapes me. I really don't know how 11 days has just gone like that. And I am dealing with my own health matters as well. So it's been, pretty challenging time. And it's winter. It's very cold here, actually. Regarding the Babylonian material, I might just touch on a couple of things today, but the truth of the matter is that the complexity of that level of astrology relative to Venus is so huge. It's just so huge. And I'm actually, I'm just in the process of listening to a webinar by Rumen Kolev, whom has just really produced incredible material about Venus and about the pentagram, the five-pointed star, just in a very, very different way to what I'm used to. So I've had to retrain my brain to look at the five-pointed star, but from a very different perspective. So that's kind of been, it's been really challenging, actually, because I'm so used to seeing the 5 Venus star points, the pentagram, relative to it reflecting the Sun-Venus conjunctions, which is what it is. But in the Babylonian model and the pentagram that Rumen works with, it's not about the Sun-Venus conjunctions necessarily, but rather it is about the appearance and disappearance of Venus in the sky and the power that speaks to, the themes that it speaks to, the matters on earth that it speaks to, the matters in our lives, and so forth. So it's very, very complex. And I'm actually just over halfway through a 5-hour webinar. And I'm just not ready to bring all that material forth. Further to that, I have spoken to Rumen, and I've invited him to come onto my channel and share with all of you and myself bits and pieces of that material. And he's graciously accepted my invitation, which I'm really looking forward to. So that will come a little bit later. And then down the track, I will do some, I'll probably offer a webinar myself about Venus from an evolutionary, Hellenistic, Babylonian, traditional, modern psychological, like the whole shebang, the eclectic approach, which is, I'm an eclectic astrologer. That's just how I've been really since I started astrology, which I'm eternally grateful that the goddess, the gods have gifted me with that ability to use my mind in a way where I can delve deeply into the different teachings and the different windows and the different perspectives and so forth. And I do my best to bring that to you guys. So I'm just trying to think how much of it I want to bring in today. I'll just bring in a few bits and pieces, Babylonian stuff, that is. Okay, so the first thing is Venus entered Leo, when was it? On the 6th of June, so just a few days ago. I'm doing this recording on the 10th of June. She will go retrograde on the 23rd of July she travels right back to 12 degrees of Leo in her retrograde journey. On August the 13th, she will form the Cazimi conjunction with the Sun, which is her transition of coming out of an evening star into a morning star. And she will remain in Leo until 8th of October. And she will go direct on the 4th of September. So there's quite a few passages in this window. She remains in the underworld for about 40 days. And Venus retrograde, from an evolutionary perspective, really speaks to experiencing our own dimension and field and relationship to ourselves and to all the people in our life, particularly the people that we love and care for, from a deep journey within. And it's literally a reevaluation of all our relationships and all things Venus. It always is when Venus is retrograde. It is also when planets are retrograde, from an evolutionary perspective, it is understood that when a planet turns retrograde, that journey of the symbolic journey of the planet appears to be going backwards from our perspective on Earth. It's not going backwards, but that's how it appears from our perspective on Earth, right? But the symbolism to that is the inner journey that we go through with the portal of that planet, right? And whatever it signifies. And part of the meaning in evolutionary astrology of a planet being retrograde is that we get more in touch with that energy from our own reference, from our own internal reference point, as opposed to the external reality, the external consensus reality, and everything that is presented, proposed, expected, and so forth. So that journey of going within is always an opportunity for us to get more in touch with and more aware of and more connected to, in this case, Venus, just our own value system and what we truly value and why, and how that's changed through our life as well. So it's a deep underworld kind of journey, because when Venus goes retrograde, she literally becomes Inanna. She goes into the underworld where she meets her sister, Arishka girl. And they have this story there with the two of them in the underworld. Arishka girl is the goddess of the dead, the goddess of the dark energies, the dead, and so forth. She rules that domain. And Venus is killed by her as well in the story, when you go back to the Inanna story. However, she is reborn. And that process, which has 7 gates that she goes through, when she gets to the end and when she dies, as it were, and in the story it is said that she is ultimately helped and rescued and saved by a couple of other entities, and therefore she ultimately is reborn. That rebirth process is the process of Venus, in this case right now, which will soon go retrograde, go into the underworld, meet with the sun, be absorbed into the sun's energy, and be reborn as the evening star. So as of the 22nd of October 2022, we entered the ingression of the Libran Venus star point. Pardon me. So that was an evening star. Now, the evening star, both in the normal way we work with the Venus star points, and when you go deeply into Babylonian teachings and myths and stories and so forth, the evening star corresponds to the goddess Aphrodite. the Venus Aphrodite, the one that we typically associate with love, Aphrodite, the more peaceful, softer goddess that brings and exudes that power of love. So the evening star is more connected to the stream of love, right? She's quite a cerebral goddess, so she connects to the spiritual world. She's not. I mean, a contrast to that, when she's a morning star, she's a war goddess. She's a warrior goddess. So the evening star is Aphrodite, and that's the one we're coming out of as we transition into this morning star period in Leo. Venus morning star in Leo, 20 degrees. So we come out of an Aphrodite energy and we're going into an Athena energy, Pallas Athena. So Pallas Athena is the deity or the divinity that corresponds to the morning star. So everything that we know about Pallas Athena, which there's an asteroid called Pallas Athena, and many of us work with the asteroid as well. And the asteroid Pallas Athena is almost identical to the morning star. That the traits and characteristics of the morning star are that of Pallas Athena. She's extremely powerful as a morning star relative to all matters on Earth. So we have this shift, first and foremost, in this energy transition from an evening star to a morning star. So the evening star has been a process in Libra that has connected us more to the softer side of Venus. She's more passive. She's more behind the scenes. There's a softer approach to her. She approaches very gently. And a very interesting thing that I also learned in the webinar that I've been listening to is that when, and I've got to get this right, it's a bit tricky. When Venus appears as the evening star, that's right, when Venus appears as the evening star, she appears very gradually and slowly. I'm talking about in the sky, because the Babylonians in Mesopotamia at those times, they were true observers of the sky, right? So they were watching what Venus was doing. They knew where she was at any given moment. They knew when she was going to appear and when she was going to disappear. This appearance and disappearance is a huge teaching in Babylonian astrology, and is something that is not often spoken about. It is spoken about a little bit here and there, and the way you'd hear about it is in the term of heliacal phases, a planet's heliacal phase. That corresponds to when the planet, in this case Venus, is visible or invisible, how she transitions into those different stages, and it is observable in our sky. So when she appears as an evening star, which is after she forms a conjunction to the sun in her direct movement, and that is when she's furthest from the earth, right, on the other side, as it were. Because when she is retrograde, she is closest to the earth. So when she appears as an evening star, after she forms her Cazimi conjunction to the sun, it takes a while before we actually get to see her visually in the night sky. So she's invisible for a while. Then gradually she appears very, very slowly, mysteriously and slowly. She just appears. And that specific phenomena, which is an astronomical phenomena, in fact, relative to the planet Venus, is a description of the evening star souls, people who are born with Venus as an evening star. And that is to say that they appear in people's lives in a very slow, mysterious kind of manner. They just kind of come slowly out of nowhere. There's this energy that just appears. Interestingly, when Venus is an evening star, and she gradually appears and stays in the evening sky for quite some time, eventually she will disappear. And that disappearance is huge, is a very important passage, and we are just about to go through that at the moment. When she disappears as an evening star, she disappears just like that, like a flash, gone. So she's there one night and then bang, the next day she's just gone. Can't see her. The opposite is the case when she's a morning star. That is that she appears quickly, and you'll see this if you observe Venus in this cycle we're about to step into, which is she's about to transition from an evening star to a morning star. You can watch this, and I encourage you to do so. You know, astrology back in the day, they didn't have computers. People didn't have computers, right? Everything was done through observation with their eyes. And we've lost touch with that. That's such an important, I feel that it's such an important thing to remember, to practice, because we can. The planets and the stars are still there. They haven't gone anywhere. We've just become so so limited, actually, with technology. You know, on the one hand, there's tremendous revelations and, you know, technological advancements that have taken us, you know, in directions that we never thought possible. No question about that. But on the other hand, it's taken us further and further away from the visceral, real experience of the sky, the stars, the planets, the observation with our own eyes. So when she is a morning star, she appears very quickly. You will see that if you observe her movement over the next few weeks, right? She'll form her conjunction to the sun on the 13th of August, and then she'll be like this bright, sparkling diamond in the eastern horizon in the morning. And I saw this because I observed it when I was living in my previous place, and I was living on the eastern side, and my balcony faced virtually directly east. So I was able to see, you know, the sunrise and anything that was rising, essentially. So I got to experience, you know, this visceral experience of Venus. And I was getting up every morning, and I'm not a morning person by nature. I never have been. But I was, you know, making an effort to get up every morning and just watch her rise. And it is the most spectacular visual to witness. There's something very, very beautiful, magical, spiritual about that experience. And I think that helps us as well with our experience going through this journey with Venus retrograde, which is her journey into the underworld. So, I mean, there's different rituals and practices, you know, that people undergo relative to Venus's cycle. And, you know, when she goes retrograde, there's people who work on, you know, very specific conscious journeys for the whole 40 days where she's, you know, in this retrograde period. And part of that is actually getting up and watching her rise, seeing her in the sky. You know, it's just magical. And so she appears very quickly as a morning star. And then when she's gradually finishing that cycle relative to her appearance, she'll vanish slowly. She won't vanish quickly. So you see, it's the opposite of what I said before. As an evening star, she comes in slowly, like this mysterious goddess comes in slowly and then vanishes quickly. And as the morning star, she comes in quickly and disappears slowly, which is a very interesting phenomenon to observe as well. And that has tremendous significance in our lives relative to all Venusian things when she is visible and when she's invisible. And that is the fundamental underpinning of the significance of Babylonian Venus in the Babylonian teachings. That's what underpins the teachings, essentially. I'll get more into that as time goes on down the track, but I wanted to just introduce you to a couple of facts and things to consider, right, when you are thinking about Venus retrograde, Venus being reborn into a morning star, over the next few weeks. And she will be in Leo for a very long time as well. The other thing that I want to say, which also is part of Babylonian Venus, when she's in the sign of Leo, she actually has an exaltation position in Babylonian astrology, which is like kind of mind-boggling, but I can understand it now that I've been working on this material for a little while. We know that traditionally Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Hi, Coco. She is exalted in Pisces. She's in her detriment and fall in Virgo and Gemini. What am I saying? The Virgo, opposite to Pisces, and Scorpio. And if you look at if you go into the teachings of Venus in Babylonian astrology, she had with her, one of her animals was the lion, the Leo lion. And so it is said that when she is a morning star in Leo, and visible, she is like a supreme powerhouse. So if you were born with Venus in Leo as a morning star and visible, I'd love to see your chart. In fact, I have a family member, one of my brothers, he has Venus in Leo, morning star, visible. And I can see that in him and in his life, with his Venus life, with his Venusian self, with his relationships and so forth. It's quite fascinating, actually. So yeah, for those of you who have Venus in Leo, that's considered like a secondary exaltation position relative to Babylonian astrology. So I thought that was really interesting, because we are now in a position where we are witnessing Venus in Leo about to transition into a morning star, and she will eventually be visible. So she'll be visible in Leo as a morning star. Very, very powerful Venus. The other thing to consider when you are thinking about this Venus retrograde journey is that it started in 2015, the Venus in Leo journey, pentagram, that is, right? So it's an 8-year cycle, essentially, right? Which started in 2015. And so it started 2015. So go back to that year and just have a little think about what was going on in your life and what you can perhaps identify. She would have been at 22 degrees Leo at that time, right? Retrograde, 2015. Then in 2019, which is the halfway point of that 8-year period, we had a Venus, it was her direct cycle, which is the midway of 8 years. And that was an evening star Venus. That's the midway of that cycle. These passages are very important to show you really where you're at the moment, because it started in 2015 and we are at the end of it now, basically, in 2023. So this cycle that we are about to step into is a cycle of really deep reevaluation of everything that has been going on in our life for the last 8 years, all Venus things. And as she prepares to step into her retrograde cycle, there's a few phases there to kind of think about. So around about the 11th of August is when she, that's when she is invisible, actually, and she'll be invisible. And that's when she's finishing the evening star phase. And that period there is a non-active period. It's not a period where we should be really making changes or decisions at that time. It's really a time to pause and reflect and just stay in that zone, stay in that portal, and just see what comes up for you, right? And observe and reflect and contemplate and consider, but it's not a time to be acting because she's invisible. As she's leading to that process, so it's her waning phase process, right? Just like the moon has a waning and waxing phase, so does Venus. So the waning phase is always closing off things, finishing things, tidying up, you know, getting your last bits and pieces cleared out, preparing for the new phase that's about to begin. So she's, as we speak right now, she's heading towards this, she's in this waning phase. So it's a time of just bringing all loose ends together of things that you are clearing out of your life, finishing, or even just acknowledging where you have been the last 8 years. And then at around about the days leading up to, say, around about the 11th of August and so forth, that's a time to just sit still, not really do much at all, you know, just meditate, sleep, relax, whatever it is. However you can get into that space where you're not acting on things. Then she is reborn as the morning star on the 13th of August. And gradually after that, she will be seen on the eastern horizon. In fact, it won't be gradual, it'll be quick. As the morning star, she comes up quickly. And that's the waxing phase. So it's a new phase, right? And then by, you know, the 4th of September, she will basically move direct. So you've got these dates, this time frame to consider relative to how you're working with this Venus retrograde cycle. The first part is the waning, which is, you know, just recognizing where you've been, what's been going on the last 8 years, what relationships have you ended, how much growth, how have your values changed, maybe your approach to relationships has changed. That could be with family, that could be with lovers, that could be with friends. Venus covers all relationships. It's not just lovers or your husband or your wife. It's really anybody you have a relationship with. Venus is the archetype that corresponds to relating. She's the relationship principle. So it's any relationship, but it's a little bit more specifically, it's more connected to, she's more connected to the people that we love, whether it's a friend or a family member or a partner or whatever. So, and of course, with this, you need to consider, you know, what house in your birth chart is Venus going to do this retrograde journey in. It's 40 days. 40 is quite a significant number and period in lots of different spiritual teachings, including in my culture, which is Greek Orthodox. When somebody leaves this world, transitions from the physical to the spiritual, we have this period from the time they leave we have this, I don't know how to explain it in English, the word for English, but we have this 40-day period where there's very important rituals going on relative to this soul that has transcended. And it's exactly 40 days, which is there's a connection to Venus, you know, going into the underworld. Because when somebody leaves their body, they are transitioning, right, from the physical into the spiritual without taking their body with them, right? So think about, you know, the house placement of this retrograde cycle, and it's going to likely be the same house of where it started 8 years ago. It just depends on whether you're using whole sign houses, what, you know, degrees you've got on the cusps if you're not using whole sign houses, and so forth. But the fact is that she's only moved 2 degrees in 8 years. So she hasn't moved very far, right? That's the cycle of Venus. These Venus star points, they move backwards in the wheel, and they move very, very slowly. So, you know, we could have like a 40-year period, for example, of these Venus pentagram cycles that are speaking to this one area of life relative to the house that this Venus pentagram is being activated in. And there are 5 of them, remember. I'm just talking about one of them right now. So, yeah, for me, it's in my 7th house. And so it speaks to my relationships. And yeah, so I'm contemplating and working through that process at the moment. Now, the other thing is that in this retrograde journey, well, before she goes retrograde, I might actually just yeah, actually, just to sidetrack for a moment, I posted a chart. I didn't post it on YouTube, but I posted it on Facebook. And I just thought this was, yeah, just an amazing example of transiting Pluto on Mercury. This is specifically about Mel Gibson, the actor, who I think is brilliant. And because of some things that had happened a few years ago, comments he made, a conversation that was leaked, private conversation between him and his partner, which, yeah, there was some pretty nasty things that he said and so on and so forth. But it was, whoever took that, they took it, they edited it, they, you know, they just made him look like shit, basically, right? And why did they do that? Because he's exposing certain entities, certain industries that don't want to be exposed. So anyway, fast forward to the present, he's just finished making a 4-part documentary on global child sex trafficking. And transiting Pluto is conjunct his Mercury 3 times as we speak, whilst he just made this doco. Now, that's classic literal symbolism of Pluto conjunct Mercury in his chart and everything he is doing. I just hope that he's going to be safe and protected, because it usually follows that when you expose these entities and these systems, your life pretty much comes to an end. It's happened to Prince, Michael Jackson, many others. So anyway, I just thought, as a side note, that's a really interesting thing that's going on. Now, let me just share my screen. And, oh, okay, so I actually forgot to prepare the chart, but that's okay. We'll just do it very quickly now. The chart for the actual conjunction is what I'm getting at. Just bear with me while where are we? Okay, so we've got to go. Well, anyway, I'll just see when they get together, which is coming up. 20 degrees, Leo. Right about there. What date did that bring it? Yeah, there you go. 13th of August. So that's the date of the conjunction, which is Venus being reborn as a morning star. Now, here's what's going on. So, square Uranus, square Jupiter. Now, got the heater on, hot water bottle, still cold. The transit of Venus square Jupiter and Uranus actually in both cases happens 3 times. And it starts actually, well, the Jupiter one, Jupiter square Venus, starts, I'll give you the dates actually, I'm written down. The first square between Jupiter and Venus is the 11th of June. The second is on the 21st of August. And the third is on the 17th of September. So it starts before Venus goes retrograde. It ends when Venus is direct, but she's still in Leo. That's one theme that's going on. And I'll just make a few comments about that in a moment. The other aspect, which is Venus square Uranus, where's the first date? Venus square Uranus, the first date is 2nd of July. The second is 10th of August. And then the third time is 28th of September. So both those patterns are kind of simultaneously working together, as it were. We could say really for this journey of Venus's retrograde period, right? Venus in Leo, retrograde, being reborn as a morning star, is making these aspects to both Uranus and Jupiter 3 times. And so we can think about these aspects as little themes and storylines that are going to be weaving through this Venus in Leo retrograde cycle, which is the Venus morning star. And both Jupiter and Uranus are in Venus's sign. So they are hosting, if you like, her natural domicile, her sign. Now, a Venus square Jupiter by nature is not a difficult aspect. It's not something that you would think, oh, shit, I better lay low during this aspect, or I, better not do this, or I better be careful with this, and so on and so forth. First of all, it's 2 benefic planets. There's a reception because Jupiter is in Venus's sign. So I'm just talking about Venus Jupiter to start with. There's a lot of good things that can come out of this Venus square Jupiter, especially creatively, especially with love and relationships, especially with happiness, enjoyment, just enjoying the sensual pleasures and delights of life, right? And lots of creative journeys or pursuits or ideas or inspirations can be born out of this. Jupiter always inspires us. And what's it inspiring? It's inspiring Venus here. She's so powerful in Leo as a morning star and then eventually becoming visible. That will be the time sorry, I forgot to mention this actually, that when she forms her conjunction to the sun on the 13th, on this day here, this is a time to really put into place for yourself the intentions, the plans, and everything that goes with that for you for the next 8 years. So this is not just a one-day thing. It is one day that she is conjunct with the sun, where she forms this Cazimi conjunction, but this energy feeds into an 8-year period moving forward for all of us. So if we can be very tuned into this, very aware, and dedicate and devote conscious intentions and practice and plans and so forth towards and with Venus, and wherever this Venus 20 degrees of Leo lands in your chart, because that's the area of life that it's speaking to. I mean, first and foremost, it is all Venusian things. So it's about everything that you love and enjoy in your life, right? But the house placement adds the field, the territory of where this is going to shine. And it is a morning star, which is the warrior goddess, which means this is a goddess who takes action. I can't emphasize enough her power in Leo, morning star, visible. This is a time, if you are planning certain projects or certain things in your life that that require, sort of a long-term view, if you like. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming if we think past tomorrow. And sometimes it's so healthy and so necessary just to be in the present moment. In fact, it's always important and healthy to be present at any moment. But there is nothing wrong with having insight, awareness, and plans towards a stream of your life over the next 8 years relative to Venus, because that's what this points to. So once again, think about, the next few weeks of the closure of things that have closed, are ready to be closed, what you've accomplished and achieved over the last 8 years. Stay still if you can around the 11th of August. And then after the conjunction, start to plan for your next 8 years relative to all Venus things. Because in her morning star phase in Leo and visible, she's offering you the gift to act on the very things that you want to act on. She's got tremendous pull and power and influence in this position. She's ready to take action with you, for you, with you. She's just ready to go for it. And she's fearless in this position, and there's not a lot that can, jolt her or hold her back. She's all guns blazing, and she's victorious and powerful in this position. The story about Troy, the Trojan War, and the Greeks, and all that stuff. Pallas Athena was one of the goddesses that was there in that battle that helped. This is a Pallas Athena Venus star point. Venus in Leo, morning star, is a Pallas Athena archetype. So from that perspective, she's Pallas Athena also speaks to creative intelligence. She's the goddess of wisdom. But the wisdom is not, it doesn't just sort of stay there as a mental, cerebral thing. It's using the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding to take the right course of action at the right time, which will bring benefit and fruits to you. That's what this energy speaks to. So the two themes running through this Venus retrograde in Leo is the square to Jupiter and Uranus. As I said, Jupiter-Venus aspects they're nothing to ever be alarmed about. If there was a downside to Venus-Jupiter, very simply put, it's laziness and overindulgence. That's, as bad as it gets. Now, for some people, that could be a problem, right? Just depends who you are and what you're doing and what's going on, right? That's kind of like the downside, but it's really more of an uplifting energy, inspiring, uplifting. There's generosity here. Jupiter is generosity, growth, enjoyment, expansion, right? And Uranus, now that's a bit of a different story because Uranus is a transpersonal planet. If we're not ready for the Uranus portal, the Uranus electric vibe, it can shock us, right? It can jolt us a bit because the position that we are in, let's say if we are in a position where we are just holding on, right, to stuff, people, things, whatever it is. Uranus always asks us to step into a portal, a pathway where we can really align ourselves with a truer version of who we are becoming. So it's kind of like you're standing in the Saturn world. That is that, you've got this in place, you've got that in place, you've got this security over here, you've got that security over there, you've got all these things lined up, and you're content with that because you think, oh, that, that's cool. I feel really safe in this space, and what I'm doing here is going to give me security for this and that and the other. That's all fine, but on the other hand, we can get very complacent, rigid, stagnant in these things that we set up, that we identify as security. And so when Uranus swoops through, it's checking this out, and it's sort of having a look and saying, okay, well, this part of your life over here, you might feel safe in it, but it's actually stopping you from growing, really. You're not moving forward. You're not growing. You're just staying in the same space, doing the same thing that you were doing 8 years ago. So the Uranus, and it is a square, right? And square aspects are dynamic. They create friction and tension. But they are the energy that also evoke change, because the square aspect creates the feeling, the sense that whatever the situation is for you, it becomes so uncomfortable that you simply have to act. You have to change the situation. You can't stay with it because squares squeeze you. So the square to Venus from Uranus can bring up, for some people, challenges in relationships. It is Venus, and it might be that sense, that desire, that feeling of I need to be free of this relationship or of this person, because I've been feeling suffocated in this. I feel like I can't be myself, kind of thing. Those are some themes that could come up. From an artistic perspective, it could be like really interesting sort of downloads that that just comes suddenly. You know, Uranus is always sudden, like a flash, like electricity, boom, just comes like sudden flash of insight, and you know, and then you're on your way because something has just suddenly come into your consciousness and awareness that has inspired you so much, you know, to create XYZ, for instance. But I feel that like on a personal level, leaving relationships aside for a moment, it's very much about your own authenticity in the values that you uphold and hold, the values that you identify with, and how that feeds into all the relationships you have. And so it's a bit of a testing ground, a bit of a checking in on how authentic and real are you being in your relationships, and are you really coming from your heart? Leo, Venus in Leo. And when it comes to actual relationships we have, it might be a bit of a testing field from the point of view of testing the if a relationship has become stale and the two souls are just sort of stagnant in that relationship, Uranus is going to bring in some waves and let the people know, let the couple know, the individual know, the souls know, hey, you know, you've become stagnant in this relationship, that you're not growing anymore. So let's rethink what's going on here. So it can bring some waves that are not very comfortable. For some people, it will just be pure and simple. This relationship, it's time for me to just finish it. I need to feel free. So Uranus brings in that sort of feeling of I need to feel liberated and free. I need some excitement. So if you're in a really boring, stale relationship that's not challenging you, that's, you know, blah, 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 this can add a lot of excitement. And it can also evoke doing some pretty wild and crazy things that you've never considered doing before. That can be a good or a bad thing. It just depends how you perceive it. In any case, it will bring in some unexpected waves. It might be your partner acting really unusual and weird all of a sudden in the relationship, and you're thinking, wow, you know, I thought I knew this person, but who's this person that I'm seeing in front of me now? I didn't know they had this side to them. Or why do they want to be sort of away from me and doing their own thing? Why do they suddenly need so much freedom? Uranus is freedom. So these themes, Jupiter, Uranus, square Venus, are going to be taken into, at a deeper level now, taken into the underworld with Venus as she descends into the underworld, where she becomes Inanna. And she's going to purge, essentially, a whole bunch of stuff in this retrograde cycle. And that purging process, clearing, purging, it's very connected to, because when you go to the story of Inanna, and she descends into the underworld and she goes through the 7 gates, at each gate she needs to remove a particular garment off her body. Now that's symbolic for us, going through this journey of Venus retrograde as we go into this internal space within and reflect on our own growth in the last 8 years and what we are ready to remove. So those 7 gates, she removes something at each gate, and by the time she gets to the last point, she's naked. That's us seeing ourselves naked. That is seeing ourselves without the mask, without the facade, without the things that we use to cover up who we are, our feelings, whether that's through how we appear, present, the things that we drink, addictions, you know, whatever it is we use to numb down or hide things that we are uncomfortable with within ourselves. It could be, you know, things that we are associate with trauma, with, you know, really difficult journeys and things we've been through. people that have hurt us, whatever it is. So when we get to that, retrograde journey, we have this opportunity to remove these layers that we have covered ourselves with and get to a really raw, honest position of looking at ourselves, with real eyes, with the truth. It's not an easy journey to really consciously go into, but it's extremely powerful when you do. And it's not about it's not even about sort of setting a particular objective and, oh, I've got to achieve this and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. It's really just allowing yourself to just naturally and organically, just follow that journey of Venus going retrograde, which is you going within and going through the 7 gates and removing something and looking at yourself in an honest way, without judgment, very important. And by the time we get to the bottom, as it were, the last gate, and Venus is reborn, we ourselves experience a rebirth. So it's a deep transformative journey that can be approached, from a shamanic level, from a divinity goddess level, shadow work, psychological therapy, whatever it is, working one-on-one with an astrologer at that time and really, going deeply into this Venus journey. There's lots of things you can do. You can do it with somebody or you can do it on your own. It's obviously up to each of us. So let me just see. In Babylonian astrology, the morning star was Inanna, also known as Ishtar, and in Ruman's work, he refers to her as Ishtar of Akkad. Akkad is a city in the Babylonian region. It was a city in the Babylonian region, and Ishtar was the divinity that was the divinity of Akkad, that city in Babylonia, and they revered her. She was the full-on warrior goddess. This is, they would work with her cycles, her heliacal phases, and her, invisibility, visibility, and so forth, when she appeared as a morning star. And they would, they would go and battle. They would go and for the attack, for, whatever was going on at that time. That's when they had the most power aligned with them, with the Ishtar of Akkad, which is Venus in a morning star. That's just another little side note relative to Babylonian teachings. Okay, I think that's mostly it from a general and broad kind of perspective, if you like. I suppose perhaps just a couple of other things that are worth considering. When Venus is retrograde, it is an opportunity to work with our own subconscious and unconscious material to our best capability, right? Because the unconscious component of each of us is about 90%. If you think about that for a moment, it's mind-boggling that, our conscious part, as it were, is just about 10%. We're just, so what we are consciously aware of from a day-to-day basis relative to what we think, what we see, what we do, is only 10%. And the 90% that is unconscious, or the approximately that percentage, that is what drives our behavior. We're not, for the most part, we are unconscious about that, which is Pluto, of course. So when a planet goes retrograde, it offers us that opportunity to access some of those layers, that territory that is unconscious. And it is an opportunity to really be aware of your own perspectives and your own projections, right? If I can just put it simply in that way. We all project lots of different things onto others, whether it could be people we have in our personal life or people we've never even met before. You don't need to have the person in front of you to project something. You can just look at a poster on a wall and project things onto that poster of that person, that poster, for instance. Projection is extremely powerful and it goes on all the time. And when Venus is retrograde, we do have an opportunity to check out that domain of our own unconscious material, little bits and pieces here and there, and what we may be projecting onto another person, you know. And if we can be clear and aware of that, it takes tremendous awareness to step back and be so objective and see what you are projecting onto another. It's not an easy thing to do, but it can be done. And I think when we can do that, we empower ourselves, because that part that we are projecting onto somebody, when we are aware of that and we can see that, then we end up bringing it back to ourselves. And what happens then? It becomes integrated. So it no longer needs to be projected. Everything, more or less, that we project are aspects of ourselves that we have not integrated. We have disowned. The disowning is what projects it onto others, and we see it in another person or group of people or community or whatever it is, because we have disowned those parts of ourselves. And usually what gets projected, not always and not the only thing, but a lot of what gets projected is our own shadow qualities, our own discomfort with our own darkness. Carl Jung said it very well when he said, I'm paraphrasing now because I've just forgotten the exact you can't become conscious by projecting or seeing angels and light out there. I've just forgotten even how to paraphrase. Sorry, my mind's gone a bit. Blah, blah, blah. I've got secondary progressed Mercury in Gemini. This started about a year ago, and it's driving me kind of loopy in a way, because my brain is just so gone into full Gemini mode. I'm doing so much more reading. There's just it's really full on. But anyway, that's just a side note. Anyway, what am I trying to say? I'm just trying to say that when we disown our own darkness, we just see it out there, pure and simple. And we just remain unintegrated when we're doing that. So when Venus goes retrograde and we can tap into this landscape that's deep within, retrograde, within, right? We can be more observant and more aware of our interactions in relationships and what we are seeing in others, and finding or making the time to really observe these interactions and these discourses and these exchanges that we are having with different people, and just being more clear and more aware of, okay, well, what am I projecting into this relationship or this person, if anything? And how can I reclaim that, bring it back to myself, and be integrated with that myself? Now, that can be something positive as well. It doesn't have to just be the dark stuff that we disown, because for the most part, we are uncomfortable with our darkness because we have been, you know, sort of brainwashed to brainwashed. Yeah, well, it is brainwashing. Brainwashed to be this, you know, perfect person, or, you know, to not do wrong and to always be, you know, to just be righteous all the time, right? And no one is. You know, we source, which is you, which is me, which is everyone, is experiencing through me, through you, through everyone, itself. And that means it is seeking to experience all things. All things means the good, the bad, and the ugly. But, you know, we've been accustomed to, you know, be influenced by culture and society, where so much has been conditioned and deprived and shamed and judged and so on and so forth. And so we have this mental conditioning, and it's like we've got this little compartment over here, and we bracket and I've just forgotten how to say the word. We bracket these things that are not accepted out there, and instead of finding a way to be at peace and at one and integrate that and decide for ourselves our own evolutionary growth and path and development, we suppress and deny and subsequently project. And that's the power of planets going retrograde. They just give us that opportunity to check in on those levels and all our relationships, because it is Venus we're talking about. So those are really the key things that we can consider, and also recognize what we have outgrown and what we are ready to just close and leave behind, and what we are really ready to begin. You know, it's an exciting, beautiful cycle of this Venus morning star, because it's a new cycle for the next 8 years. And I think it can be a little bit challenging, sometimes very challenging, with the backdrop of the current reality that's still a shit show out there. And now we've got this other shit show going on, and I'm wondering what the agenda is behind this, but the amount of, you know, division, right, that has aggravated very specific communities that are at war with each other. And it pisses me off, because, you know, if it wasn't creating division with the COVID bullshit that came up by, you know, influencing people's decisions and so on and so forth about, you know, do I get the liquid or don't I get the liquid? And if I get the liquid, then I belong to this side of the fence, and if I don't, I belong to this side. And once again, it was just this division bullshit, right? Because why? Because if humanity are united, then these other little systems will go down the toilet. So you just need to look around. It's so fucking obvious. There's always some little agenda that gets thrown into this reality, this narrative, in order to conquer and divide. It's always been there. And the last 3 years, it's just escalated and gone boom, 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 not non-stop, you know. And so now we've got this, you all know what I'm talking about, right? Children, communities, certain identifications, you know, all that stuff, right? And I'm appalled at both sides, actually, not with every single individual on both sides, but just with some individuals. I'm appalled at just how fucking unconscious people are, and they can't see beyond it's like they're puppets, you know, on strings. And these certain entities that seem to be somewhere are probably just sitting back having a laugh, right? Because all this stuff is doing is just dividing people. And when you divide people, there's more power to those that wish to retain the power. You all know what I'm talking about. So, and, you know, I just mentioned on Facebook today that, and I might as well bring it up now because I don't think I'll have time to come back and do a video. Oops. See Mercury at 28 of Taurus. So basically, okay, here it is. It's gone into Gemini. It's on the 11th of June, right? Just depends where you are, northern or southern hemisphere. Now, I'm bringing this up because of the amount of things that are going on relative to the themes I just touched on. Now, Mercury in Gemini is brilliant. We know that. Brilliant. It's its own domicile. It's impressive. When Mercury in Gemini is operating at its purest level, it's just freaking impressive, right? It's so intelligent. Intelligence isn't everything. But at that pure stream of intelligence, you know, Mercury in Gemini is just fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The downside to that is that Gemini is the sign in the zodiac that encounters the first experience of duality. If you think about the natural order of the zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, right? Geminis are twins. So, and Gemini is the first air sign. And Gemini is the one that often brings in extreme division. Donald Trump. Now, I'm not saying I'm against him or for him. I'm just simply pointing to an archetype in an individual that's powerful and known to all of us. But look at the division. So my concern with Mercury in Gemini is that it's going to square Neptune, which it's been doing for a while, because Neptune has been in Pisces for the last 12 years or so. So this is not a new thing. But I think a lot of the problems that we are still seeing relative to the lies, the deception, the confusion about what is real truth about what's being spewed out there on, you know, because social media, it's just gone crazy, right? Everyone is on social media, let's say, everyone, and everyone's airing everything, doesn't matter what it is. And so we are left really wondering, we should be questioning, well, is this actually true? Because in most cases, it's not going to be. And when Mercury squares Neptune, that is just going to magnify basically for a few days. But fortunately, it's only there for a few days. And the square happens, let's have a look. It's going to square Saturn first. So that'll be interesting. The square to Saturn doesn't worry me as much because when it comes to Saturn, it's generally speaking, the matters that arise through Saturn, you can see what's going on. You know what you're dealing with. It's going to be difficult, but you know what you're actually dealing with. It's transparent. But when you're talking about Neptune, it's the complete opposite. There's nothing transparent about it. It's so subtle. Neptune is probably the trickiest energy out of all the planets. It's so subtle, but so freaking powerful. So, you know, 16th of June, thereabouts, it's going to be square Saturn. And then, let's see, around about there, I mean, I'd have to fiddle around a few hours, but basically you're looking at, you know, 24th, 25th, 26th June, plenty about 3 days, right? Where Mercury is square Neptune. And, you know, honestly, those 3 days, I'm going to make an effort to try and not even be online at all. Because as it is, I feel so drained by the amount of BS that I'm constantly hearing. And I'm active online because I'm, you know, sharing astrology. It's the main reason. If it wasn't for that, I was thinking about that this morning. If it wasn't for doing YouTube videos, I think nobody, like I wouldn't, at the moment, the way the world is, I have no desire to be out there in any way, shape or form. Really don't. Really don't. So when this Mercury square Neptune comes up, if you're in the process of making verbal agreements or somebody else is making an agreement with you, or there is some kind of contractual matter that comes up, just be very careful of what you are agreeing to, what you are signing into. That's just standard every time Mercury is square Neptune, or conjunct, or opposite. But, you know, Mercury in Gemini, it really does connect to the internet as well, and all forms of communication. So you can imagine the shit show of what's going to come out of people's mouths at that time because of the current themes that are being, you know, egged on to create division and conflict and to separate people. You know, it's not going to be pleasant. So best not engage with it, in my opinion. All right. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think I will leave it there. Hopefully this information was useful. Let me know if you want to do some work on your own Venus star points, or this Venus retrograde cycle with your own chart, you know, because it'll be, you know, for each of us, it'll be in a particular house in our birth chart. It may be forming particular aspects to other planets and so forth. And these are all, you know, important layers, right? So what I've given today is a sort of a general overview, but there have been some specific tones, you know, inserted in today's presentation as well. So email me if you want to have me look at your chart with you and so forth. And I'll see you guys soon. Venus, blessings. Happy Venus retrograde. Remember the timing of things. It's really important, especially 11th of August. Those days there, you know, best not to take aggressive action at that time. It won't work to your favor if you do. It'll fall apart. So better best to be sort of aware and careful. But on the other hand, when she forms the conjunction to the sun and is reborn as the morning star, that's a lot of power. Now, I didn't say this, but it is obvious to me as well that because it is the morning star and she is the warrior goddess, and she is very powerful in Leo, and there are all these shit shows going on the earth plane at the moment, I expect that there's going to be matters aggravated in ways that are not going to be pleasant. We're talking about Pallas Athena, goddess of war, warrior goddess, kicking off. Of course, that can be used, that energy, right, that archetype, what she symbolizes in those ways, it is up to us how we work with that energy. Any energy we can work with whatever intention we have behind it. So, yeah. See you soon.